You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for a jam-packed show. We've got men's Ashes, we've got women's Ashes, and we've got Cricket World Cup Qualifiers, West Indies on the brink. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe-Brown. How are you doing, Max Rowe-Brown? Are you having a good evening?
Yeah, I'm having a good evening. It's a nice sunny day. The sun hasn't gone away yet in England, so absolutely very nice. Not bad for a Monday at all.
Yeah, we're without Ross today. He's crying at home, Max. I don't know if you heard about this. Obviously, Ross is the third member of the show. Maybe it's the first podcast you ever listened to. There's normally a third person, Ross. He got 99 yesterday, Max.
Yeah.
And do you know why he got 99?
I assume because he didn't want to buy a jug of beer for everyone at the end of the game.
No, what actually happened was that I was scoring and I miscounted the number of runs he had by 10 and wrote 76 as the milestone that I recorded, not 86. So when he came over at second drinks to find out what he was on, I told him he was on 76, and he thought he needed to step on it to get to his 100 sooner rather than later. Hit a few boundaries, and then was out caught. Recording the book as 89, he counted it up himself, got to 102. And then on the official recount, the official independent recount, it was determined that he did in fact score 99 runs. So he is devastated. I
would have said stop the count at 102. Stop the count.
Yeah. Welcome everyone to the pod. We're going to have three parts here. We'll do the men's Ashes, the Ollie Robinson section of the podcast. I think that's what we'll call it. We'll do that first up. Then we'll move on to the women's game. That test wrapped up today with an Aussie victory, which you could have predicted. And then finally we'll talk about the Cricket World Cup Qualifiers, which has been a great mini tournament, like an under reported on mini tournament. It doesn't help that it's happening during an Ashes series.
I mean, it's been sort of overshadowed by events.
yeah, but it has been fantastic. We'll shed a little bit of light on that and do any questions as they come in. If you are watching, drop us a message. Do hit like, do hit subscribe, and say hello to us. If you're watching live or later. There we go, Max. What's going on in the news then? So we're heading towards the second test, and we've got the fallout of the first test. Can you give us a summary of events in men's Ashes cricket land?
Yeah, well, there's two big bits of news, aren't there, really? We'll start with the slightly more boring bit of news, which was that England drafted in Rayan Ahmed into the squad after Moeen Ali's finger injury. So that's potentially a clue about where they might go. We'll get to that bit. But obviously the main news is Ollie Robinson losing his mind in his wisdom column. And a number of former Australian cricketers losing their mind in response at said column, and it's just generally been hilarious about how much England are pissing people off with. I mean, it depends how you look at it, like whether it's them just being completely, deluded or like unnecessarily arrogant, having just lost a game of cricket, or whether it's all part of some grand plan, and how brilliantly it's riled all the Australians up to the point that maybe it is just a bit of mind games tactic. Who knows? But it's funny. That's one thing that we can be pretty sure of. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, like it has been. It's been pretty funny. But normally, Max, we don't tend to get involved in some of the off-field stuff, and I think generally speaking, when the reportage of cricket ends up dwelling on send-offs or what someone wrote in their column for Wisdom, or whatever phony war bullshit you want to kind of like drag in. Generally speaking, I think that is people that gets reported on by people who don't know enough about the actual cricket to have an interesting opinion about what happened on the field. And so
turns out one of those is Ollie Robinson.
Yeah, basic copy and paste. But that's sort of what's so great about this, or where I'm happy to make an exception for this podcast and actually do some off the field nonsense. I mean, I say that. I mean, like we're very happy to indulge overall.
Yeah, I mean, if someone's headbutting someone in a walkabout, you know, we're not going to not talk about it, are
we? But this is sort of really taking the cake. The Ollie Robinson, and it seems like it actually is Ollie Robinson. Now, I thought it would be Ghost written, but it does seem.
I don't know. Have you read it?
It seems like a man who has just come out of a changing room and slapped some words down, maybe on his phone. It reads like one of those Instagram posts that people put up after they've been found doing something very wrong. Like, you know, one of those apology things, except that he isn't apologizing at all. He's doubling down basically on the whole thing. There's some great quotes in it. Max, he said, we were surprised by how defensive Australia were and how unwilling they were to go toe to toe with us. A bit of a tongue twister there. He also gave us some insight into McCullum. And these are the sorts of things that I don't think are really supposed to get out of the dressing room. I don't think, generally speaking, you report.
They're the slightly more interesting bits.
Yeah. He said, Bad spoke first. He always goes first when we lose. He just said, lads, I'm immensely proud of the efforts you put in. We've made the game what it was. We were so close to pulling off an unbelievable victory. We played all the cricket in the game. It wasn't for us. If it wasn't for us, the Australians wouldn't have even had a chance to win, which I think is a really interesting quote. One, because it kind of tells you where Baz and the lads are coming from. And I think some of their talk about entertainment is true. I think they genuinely do see themselves as people who are supposed to market Test cricket and make it entertaining. And I think that does factor into how they play the game. What really stuck out to me in that little quote there, though, Max, and maybe it did for you as well, was the last sentence. If it wasn't for us, the Australians wouldn't even have had a chance to win.
Well, I mean, when you drop that many catches, it helps, doesn't it?
You do a crazy declaration. You bat like a bunch of nutcases, drop a bunch of catches, and then take credit for the other team winning. That is brilliant. It's
proper gaslighting. It is full on gaslighting, is what they're doing. And maybe they're trying to gaslight themselves about, you know, and pretend and forget the fact that they lost. Fair enough. It's a nice way of going about it, I suppose.
It's I've got a theory on this. Last quote, because I hope that he continues to write this this column. I don't know if he'll be allowed to. I suspect that someone might read it before the next one goes out. Like it has the sense of something that he's done off grid, complete loose cannon vibes about it. Sent it off to Wisdom, and they've been like, "This is too good not to publish." I imagine the next one is going to go through somebody in the ECB press office. Final quote, and then the dust settles, and you're reminded again of the bigger picture. It's about more than just winning a test match, because at the end of the day, stats are forgotten. It's more than that. We're trying to create memories and be that team that everyone still speaks about in 20 to 30 years' time. And this is where I wonder, Max, and you are someone with a psychology degree, whether there's a little bit of psychology in the whole operation with what England are doing. By making entertainment and fun and excitement part of the equation, or a factor in their decisions and how they play, they can almost exonerate themselves if they lose. As long as they lose in an entertaining fashion, it's sort of like, well, we did half the job. It's not the end of the world. It's nobody from an England point of view, and I think this is actually why it's annoying some people. Nobody seems to be that bothered by the fact that England are 1-0 down in the Ashes. They're sort of like, and what, mate?
I know that's
you know what I mean.
It's like they're kind of, it's a really extreme version of trying to like relieve the pressure of results, I suppose. And there's a good angle in terms of, you know, if you're enjoying what you're doing and you're enjoying your sport and enjoying your cricket, you're more likely to do better at it, and then you're more likely to win and perform well. And that's pretty much the I guess the ethos that they're trying to build, and it's sort of evident that it's been reasonably successful so far. I mean, you've taken the same players who were 1-17 and turned them around, and they've won, 11 out of 13 since Bazball
11 out of 14 now, I think.
14 now, like So I mean, you know, there's clearly some early evidence that kind of change in mindset has been successful, but it's a very good point that the British has just said, which is what is the point of creating memories if you're just going to lose. Like it's almost like a really selfish. Like we don't care about the England fans or who want us to win and beat Australia in the Ashes, which is huge. We just want people to remember us, and maybe people will remember them for being full of hubris and falling flat on their faces. They would be remembered if that's what happens. But I was sort of looking at like the plans of the declaration, everything, and thinking like it's great that you want to force a result and a win, having a shot of a win, and sort of sacrificing a really good chance of drawing for a much smaller increase in your chance of winning is like a sort of valiant approach to take in a game of cricket, in a one-off game of cricket. But there's a 5-match test series in the Ashes, which is the biggest test series, well, certainly in this country, and I assume in Australia as well, is what everyone wants to win. And when you're trying to win them back, starting 1-0 down when you could have had an easy draw is it's interesting that they've basically disregarded the sort of wider picture of the series as a whole and the result they can get for this one win. That was what struck me with the sort of whole approach. But we'll see how it goes. They've got a hill to climb now, like 1-0 down with 4 to play, and they're going to Lords next, where they are historically absolutely dreadful, particularly against Australia. So we'll see. Could be an early embarrassment.
We will see. There's been some Aussie reaction to this, of course. There was a clip circulating from Triple M radio station. Ollie Flogginson. I didn't really get that.
Was this the angry guy that they had like
the angry guy,
a glass box? Yeah,
and he just swears about things. That's his whole shtick.
And then some people pretend
3
it's
minutes
funny.
of swearing.
Yeah.
Matt Hayden called him a forgettable cricketer. Michael Clark today said Ollie Robinson wouldn't be in the team if it weren't for injuries, and then named a player who wasn't injured as someone England would pick instead.
That's also been really interesting seeing the Australian reaction and how little they know about England cricketers as well. Ollie Robinson is probably our best bowler.
I mean, this is the kind of funny thing about it. From the Australian point of view, they've written this guy off. The guy's played 17 tests. He averages 21 and a half. In his 17 tests, he's played 9 away from home in Pakistan, Australia, and New Zealand. Probably the 3 hardest places to go and take wickets in the world, unless India are fancy rolling out a road. But I'd say over the last 3 years, hardest places to pick up wickets. And he took 5 for 98 in the match, which was the best bowling average of anyone in the game. So he actually did play kind of okay, Robinson. You would say
for a guy who
did okay.
First 2 or 3 spells were pretty bad. He got back.
But he's really. I mean, I don't really know who are the big Australian hate figures out there in the world, because he's
from the point of
really
view
gone up the list.
Just
anything,
who they hate.
Like who killed
it used
Ned
to be Stuart
Kelly?
Broad.
That guy.
It was like who's Stuart Broad?
No, I'm thinking bigger than that.
Bigger than that.
Yeah, I think he's overtaking Stuart Broad here. I mean, Stuart Broad's a bit of a cult.
No,
figure.
I think he has. I think he has. But I think like 5-6 years ago, or maybe even longer, Stuart Broad was like public enemy number 1, wasn't he? Front page of the paper kind of stuff.
Yeah, he was. Right, Max. They are going to go on and they are going to play another match at Lords, as you said. A few things to consider here. England have been talking about going harder. Harder isn't really a thing in cricket.
No.
I don't know how you actually go harder. How do you go softer? What is the scale of softness to hardness in terms of actual on-field actions?
Maybe they use
that isn't known, but England, England are going to go harder. I think that means more baseball. I think that's them saying we.
Does that mean Australia are going to park the bus?
First question for you, is that the right approach? Should England recalibrate slightly? Do they need to go back slightly more towards the orthodox? Should they roll out a green seamer and release Anderson? Or is more runs, faster runs, the route?
Yeah, well, like you say, it's hard to know because you don't really know what they mean. They say we're going to go harder. I don't know what that means. To be honest, I'm like, I think the approach they took in that test match was was fine. It was good. It was exciting. I enjoyed it. I guess the couple of things that let them down. There was, a few decisions, a couple of drop catches, not taking a new ball at the end. It could have gone the other way. England could have won that Test match. I mean, Crick Viz would have had you believe that they were going to win it all day long, but that's another story. But I think the other thing that probably let it down slightly was the pitch, and it was just a bit, it was a bit flaccid, wasn't it? I wouldn't be rolling out a green Seamer, but maybe something with a bit of grass on it would be a start. Not as much grass as it had today.
Yeah, on Pitch Watch, we can report that we have seen a photo of the pitch, and it does look very green. And the thing with Lords, because of their drainage, this is genuinely true. Because of their drainage, they have to leave a lot of moisture in the surface on day one. Otherwise, it dries out completely by day 4. So you get this thing where day 1 is often very difficult to bat because the pitch is sort of a day out from where it should be at that point in the game. And then days 2 and 3 are really, really good to bat. And then days 4 and 5 sort of progress like a normal Test match wicket. They get a little bit worse, a little bit more variable bounce in there.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be cloudy on Wednesday. It does look green. It could be a big toss to win, I think. There's another question from an England point of view. We don't really know whether Moeen will be fit. He's still with the squad. There was a photo of him carrying a chair with his hand. I don't know if we're going to read too much into that. Like he is capable of carrying a chair with that finger.
Yeah, how prominent is the seam on that chair, though?
That's
the
a good
stitching
question.
in the upholstery.
Was he trying to spin the chair? That is unknown. It was a still image. England have called up Rayan Ahmed to potentially fill the gap. Do you think there's actually a serious chance of him being selected here if say Moeen isn't picked, or does Wokes enter the fray? What are England's plans? Where are they going to take this?
Yes, I mean, if it were me, I don't think I'd bother. I don't think I'd bother if Moeen were fit. I mean, I'm not sure he's going to be fit. I think that finger thing is going to be a problem. It could be, it could take a bit of time to get, I guess, his fingers up to strength to the point that they can handle all the friction. And like Lords, do you need a frontline spinner at Lords when you have the England pace attack that they've got? I mean, you've got, like you said, Chris Wokes. He averages 11 at Lords, so might bring him in. And then obviously Mark Wood. There was a sense that you could have done with a bit of Mark Wood last week, but obviously it's a different pitch and there'll be a bit more in it at Lords, so maybe less important. I think people sort of make a bit of a buzz about Mark Wood's record at Lords, and it's not great, but it's actually not as bad as it is at some other venues in England. He's obviously got a much better away record than home record, but I think that bit of extra pace would be worth having. That's probably the route I'd go down. I'd probably bring them both in. But I was actually looking at the Lords venue stats, and leg spin does do well. So Rayan Ahmed could be an option. I think the fact they've actually brought him in suggests that that's where they'll go.
I mean,
I don't think they'd have bothered.
I wouldn't be stunned by it at all. It's definitely, I think, with the way Stokes is at the moment, they definitely like having a spinner in the team to shoulder extra overs. There's a lot spoken about Stokes' wacky captaincy and how he used Harry Brook as a first change bowler and stuff like that. I think what Stokes is doing with that, and this is the reason they like having a spinner in the side, is he's basically trying to find overs that mean that he doesn't have to bowl a spell with a frontline bowler. So if you look at when Harry Brook bowled, I think it was the over before drinks and then the over before lunch. And both of those overs, Australia playing extremely orthodox cricket, were like, we're just not going to lose a wicket here. We're not even going to try and score a run off the worst bowler that we will face all year in Test cricket. Like, we're just going to flat bat him. And the same can be said for some of the spells Root bowled. There are during periods of the game when Australia just weren't trying to attack. And that means that Robinson doesn't have to bowl. It means Anderson doesn't have to bowl. It means Broad doesn't have to bowl until you really
Stokes
need them.
Doesn't have to bowl.
And Stokes doesn't, and then they're fresh. And so I think that's why there's really good chance that they will play Rayan Ahmed, because he fits into that idea of not burning through quick bowlers in spells of the game where it's not that likely that a quick bowler is going to get a breakthrough, and also you're putting miles in their legs so that later on they can't deliver the goods when you need it. So I do think they'll be tempted by that. I mean, were it me, I agree with you. I think I would go with Wokes and Wood, rotate out one of Anderson and Broad. I don't think it really matters that much. I think you probably want Robinson. He's almost a perfect bowler for Lords. And then you're all right. I think as long as you have Wood in the team, you have a point of difference that isn't.
And if you have the extra seamer, there's less of an onus on needing to find those overs, because obviously England were also in that sense in Edgbaston where Stokes couldn't bowl that many overs. There was a question around Robinson at one point. There was a question around Anderson at one point, and Broad was pretty much operating on fumes by the end. So you did need the spinner in that situation. But when you do have the extra seamer, it may be less of an issue. It's sort of a catch-22, I suppose, isn't it?
What's your prediction then for this test to round off part one of the cricket podcast for this Monday evening?
It's going to be a hard victory for England. They're going to win the toss and they're going to bowl Australia out for 90.
90.
Yeah.
Okay, that's that would be quite astonishing. That is a bold prediction. I mean, I do think the toss will be a big factor in this game. I think whoever wins the toss immediately is 10% more likely to win the game than they were before the coin is thrown up in the air.
Yeah.
I think there is a chance here that Australia don't learn from what they did well in the first test, and they just sort of assume that they played amazing cricket and are therefore going to win the Ashes easily.
You mean they get sucked into Ollie Robinson's accusations of defensiveness when in fact it was quite clever planning?
Yeah. Well, I think partly that, but I think also I think if you're Australian, you have to acknowledge that you rode your luck at points in that game, and some of the things that you thought were good ideas probably weren't. They probably over the test match on that pitch did bat a bit too slowly. I think in the first innings they didn't have a clear plan for how they wanted to bowl, and they were, maybe lucky is the wrong word. I think Nathan Lyon did bowl really well on day one, but there is an alternate universe where England finished that day on 450. And it was, they were close to being in that alternate universe a number of times. And I don't think those bowling plans are what I would want to pursue in the first innings next time. But I think because they won the match, they might assume that everything was really well executed, and
But it was the second innings where it turned around, wasn't it? England's second innings and Cummins and Lyon, the way they bowled. So hopefully hopefully from their point of view, that's what they take out of it. But hopefully from England's point of view,
bowl loads of Cummins and Lyon. Is the solution. It could be. Right, Max, we're going to take a break, if that's all right with you. And we will drop back in 14 seconds with part two on the England v Australia, or the Women's Ashes, which is called the Women's Ashes. You don't even need to say the teams. Everyone knows what it is. See you in a second.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to part two of the Cricket Podcast, where we are going to be talking about the Women's Ashes. It was a test match that ground its way through the first 3 days before it burst into life on day 4. England ran through the Aussies to set up what looked like an achievable chase on a fairly flat wicket, but Ash Gardner came through big for Australia. Took an 8 for 10 for the match. And it means the Australians go 4-0 up. The repercussions of that are that England will need to win 5 of the 6 white ball games to win the Ashes. Max, I'm going to throw it to you. Can you give us a more detailed summary? What were the key story beats? Like, what do people need to know? What captured your imagination from this one-off test?
Well, it was, I think overall, I'll start with, I guess, the bigger picture stuff. It was always a question of, can England go toe-to-toe with Australia? Obviously the best side in the world, and quite comfortably the best side in the world over the last, forever. And by and large, they did. But it also felt a lot like many other games of cricket between England and Australia, or even like India and Australia in women's cricket, where for 75%, 80% of the game, the sides are looking really evenly matched. And then in those key moments, it goes one way, and that way is always with Australia. And it happened again. I mean, the first innings was, it was for England, it was all about Tammy Beaumont scoring 208, which was a phenomenal effort under the pressure of the 473 Australia put up with Elise Perry's 99 and Annabelle Sutherland putting out 137 not out to really frustrate England, as they looked like they'd just made some inroads. And then, Australia looked like they were getting away. England bowled a bit poorly to start with. And then England came roaring back on day 4. As you say, skittled them, bar Alyssa Healy's 50. And looks like, setting up a really manageable chase. And there were a few things in that second innings from Australia where England put down quite a few fairly manageable catching chances, and that's one of those moments where you talk about when you really need people to step up and things don't quite go for you. And then from the other side, it was Ash Gardner stepping up for Australia when England got off to a good start and looked like they were really in with a good shout, and then it all fell into a heap. And it's just those key moments, the sliding doors moments, as it were, I suppose, where it went the wrong way. But I think it was heartening for England. They looked good. They looked exciting. They played good cricket, and it's a real shame for them that it ended the way they did. They can take heart, but it's just the same old story again, isn't it?
I mean, I've lost count of the number of games this Australia women's team have won since we've been doing this podcast where it looked like they were going to lose.
Yeah,
like it happened so often. And during this match, there were a few times they were in major danger. First innings, what were they? 200 for 5. And then
230 for 6.
4. Yeah, well, then they end up with 470. I think that was a big difference between the two sides as well. And this is, this is where this Australia team, this is how they do it. I think in that scenario, they had people who could bat all the way down the order. England's 9, 10, 11. I think all average less than 10. They're proper rabbits. Not the case for Australia. They're quite happy. They're probably enjoying their time at the crease, to be honest. Like happy that they finally got a bat. Like they piled on the runs, and that's a huge difference between England, probably the second best team in the world, maybe the third with India in the mix, and Australia. And then the other thing is the sort of general contributions that you get the whole way through the Australia lineup. I think particularly from a batting perspective in this test, but quite often it's the bowling. So just every single one of them is worth their place in the team. England, they're not a two-person team. Well, they weren't a two-person team in this test. There were other contributions made, but it took.
There are people who really stand out, aren't there?
It took pretty miraculous performances from two of them to put England even set up the possibility of an England win. And obviously here talking about Tabby Beaumont and the 200 runs, which is pretty good. And Sophie Ecclestone, who took 10 for in the match and seemed to bowl. I'm sure at some point she was bowling from both ends. Like it was an ungodly amount of overs that she bowled. And she bowled really, really well. But there was just nothing at the other end for long stretches of play. And it's really hard to win a cricket match when that's sort of when you basically got
overs in the match.
Well, when you that's like an entire new ball's worth of overs. That's like almost an entire day of the test by one person there. Like that's completely preposterous. And if
it's a men's test, it probably is an entire day.
Yeah, it shows how how far I suppose Australia are away from England, even in a match where it looked like England were in it. That England are completely reliant, effectively, on one player there to keep them in the contest. And And to be fair to Sophie Eccleston, she did a really good job. She actually did do that. But as you said, it did sort of all come down in a heap from an England point of view in that second innings. Ash Gardner, she's pretty good. Do you reckon there's a chance she could come in for the England men's team next week? A last minute passport.
Well, I don't know. Off spin, isn't it? Not really. We've got enough of that. I'd put Sophie Eccleston in. Why not? Like, genuinely, wouldn't do badly. It would fit the team quite nicely, but no, that's obviously being facetious. It's just annoying. Like, every time you think that the gap's being closed, you get a reminder. But it's the thing I think that is slightly frustrating is like it's definitely right that the test match carries the weight that it does. Well, not the weight that it does, but it carries the most weight in the sort of the series of the points-based format. But it is a shame that this is the only one, isn't it? Like when you see a game like that and the way it finishes, and finally got a 5-day test as well. You do think, whether there's mileage for an extra one, maybe reduce the points slightly so that it evens up. I mean, you could have one at the start and one at the end. Then you got like a Hail Mary at the end. So like you start with a test match, you have the white ball, you're miles behind, but you've still got a Hail Mary. You could win that final test and turn it all around. That'd be quite good, wouldn't it? Double points final test match.
So I was going to say that was actually one of the talking points I had. I think that having the test at the beginning of the series isn't the time to have it because it means that one side's effectively got a huge head start going into the white ball matches, and I think
you end up with dead rubbers. It's not what you want.
Well, you could end up with dead rubbers. I mean, conversely, if Australia won 5 of the 6 white ball matches, which they are, is a possibility, then the test match could be completely pointless. So playing the test match at the end might be bad too. Maybe in the middle, maybe you do 3 T20s, then a test match, then some 50 over cricket. I don't know. So these are. I think the scheduling is a bit.
It can be looked at.
Yeah, I think you could look at that. I think probably playing another test match would be reasonable as well. There was decent attendance across the few days. It was pretty well reported on. It seemed like people were engaged in it. From a pure entertainment point of view, I actually didn't think it was that great a game.
No?
I think
the first
470 plays
days,
460 on the first day or the first 3 days. I don't think that makes for entertaining cricket. It certainly ends up on the second half of day 4. Those 2 sessions are really interesting where England run through Australia and then Australia are under pressure and they fight back right at the end of day 4. That was, captivating, high quality, entertaining cricket. But it stood out as the period of the game that actually was exciting to me. Like I did some commentary earlier in the test for Guerrilla Cricket on it, and basically the only talking point was like there weren't any talking points. The talking point was like how many runs are Australia going to get before they declare, and I think if you're talking about that at the end of day 1, that's a bit tedious. And then England come back, and it's a great innings from Tammy Beaumont to drag England back into the test. But as we were talking about entertainment earlier, as a thing to entertain, I thought the first 3 days of the test were a bit dull, and I don't think the pitch really helped that. I mean, I think there are some things. I know. I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, this is one of the first 5-day tests for a while. I want to say maybe the first one we've had in England for a while. Anyway, I don't know whether they have quite worked out what type of pitch you need to prepare.
You think maybe they were trying to play a bit safe to make sure it went 5 days?
Well, I mean, I don't know what they were trying to do. I don't actually know. I don't know what enters the mind of a groundsman. I don't know.
I mean, the men's
what they were asked to prepare. But what I'm saying is that we've had
pretty dull as well. So
we've had 52 women's tests. So what I'm saying is that we don't know at this point in time, I think, like what an ideal wicket is in women's test cricket, like how to prepare that, how to bring the ball into the game on day 1 and 2. And this isn't the first women's test which has had this rhythm to it, like piles and piles of runs in the first 2 innings.
Haven't
and then
there been like
mayhem
30
later.
draws out of those 50?
Well, there's a lot. There's too many draws, and then there are things you can do to bring the ball into the game a little bit more, and I think there's a little bit to do with that. Having said that, like I mean, this test probably isn't. It's not really filed under bore, draw, or boring test match because it does come to life on day 4 and 5.
And we were a bit spoiled by the one that preceded it.
Yeah, so yeah, and it has happened the week after the best test I've ever seen. So there's a few other factors to consider, but I do think, you know, if you were, one of the things that you need to do in order to know how to prepare a good wicket for a women's test is play some more women's test matches. So to go back to your original point, let's play a couple more of summer. If you're England, if you're the English Cricket Board, you can definitely afford it, and I think that would be a good thing to do. For the rest of the series, Max, can you see England winning 5 out of 6?
No. In a word. I mean, you've got double world champions in the formats. Like, what hope have you got? They'll win. They might win a couple, maybe one ODI and one T20. But it's tough, isn't it? You just can't see it.
Yeah. Right, Max, we are going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we're going to talk about the World Cup qualifiers. There's been some mad games. The maddest was today, but there's some mad other games as well. It's like high stakes stuff. Sets it up. Well, it is the qualifier for the World Cup this year. It sets that up nicely. I'm looking forward to that. If you have any questions, if you're watching live and you've got any questions, do put them in the chat because we should have a little bit of time at the end of the show for bits, and also say hello. It helps with our interactions, our engagement stats on YouTube, which is really the whole game. We're not in this to talk about cricket. We are in this for engagement stats on YouTube. So help us out. Help a brother out, as they would say. We'll be back in 1 second.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Back to the Cricket Podcast for part 3. We're going to be talking about the Cricket World Cup qualifiers. It's been a doozy of a tournament. I'm just going to summarise how it works because it is, with all the cricket that's going on.
It's worth doing.
Series going on at the same time. We've got this happening in Zimbabwe. The T20 Blast is on. There's a round of championship games happening at the moment. There is an absolute barrage of cricket. India preparing to go to the West Indies. I think the Tamil Nadu Premier League's on.
Yep.
Seen a couple of catches from that circling. And then the club season. Ross got 99 yesterday. We don't have endless bandwidth, but there have been some games in this that have cut through and really do serve some attention. So this is how it works. There are 10 teams in the qualifier. They're in Group A and they're in Group B. Top 3 from those two groups go through to the Super 6 round. You carry forward the points from the other teams that qualify from your group into that Super 6. In the Super 6, you then play the 3 teams who qualified from the other group. The top 2, they go through to the World Cup and they have to play an extra match, the Cricket World Cup qualifier final, which is meaningless. Like, I don't think you get anything for it. But, cricket, they have to play an extra match. The other 4 teams do not go to the World Cup, and the 2 that do, they obviously make up the 10. There's 8 already through from the Cricket Super League.
You know what would be
Max,
a good prize?
You've got a question.
Yeah, you know what would be a good prize for winning the Cricket World Cup qualifier final game, whatever it is? You get to choose what group you end up in. They draw the groups for the World Cup, and then you get to choose.
Well, that would be a good prize. But there is only one group.
Oh, it's just the 110, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So not quite as not quite as clever a plan as you thought there, Max.
No, it wasn't. It would be good though, wouldn't it? It'd be fun.
Well, I mean, certainly in the future, the World Cup is going to expand, and this is one of the things I think we'll get to. It is going to expand, I think, up to 12 teams for the next iteration. I mean, how generous the ICC are, like allowing 12 teams into the World Cup.
8, 16, 10, 12, 14. When will they make their mind up?
No, exactly. But it will be time for this one. Max, this is basically how things stand at the moment. Group A has finished off. Zimbabwe, they have picked up 4 wins, which leaves them in a great place for the Super Six. That means they carry forward two wins effectively into that round. They will be joined by the Netherlands and the West Indies, and we'll get to them shortly. Nepal and the USA have been eliminated. They picked up 1 win between them. I just want to say, Nepal had Sandeep Lamichhane playing for them, which
That's questionable,
really,
isn't it?
really think is questionable. The guy, if you don't know, is under. He was arrested for, I guess at this point in time, an alleged rape of a minor. This isn't. He hasn't. This is an ongoing case, and they were like, "Well, we kind of need him at the World Cup qualifiers, though." So he's flown out there to play in these games. Only 1 win. It would have been a great story if he wasn't involved in the cricket. I'd have been really rooting for Nepal, but he was. So I'm glad they're out.
Fair.
In Group B, Sri Lanka, they're sit top. They've won 3. Scotland have been playing some hot cricket. They've won 3 too. And surprisingly, Max, Oman have made it through.
Yeah.
The round. They've won 2 of their 4 matches.
The
Guaranteed
Jacinda
through.
Singh All-Stars.
Because Ireland and the UAE have lost all 3 of their matches and therefore cannot catch Oman. I mean, Oman are effectively out, but they get to play a few more cricket matches. It's very difficult for them to get through. Let's start with
Indies.
A couple of stories in Group B, which I think are interesting. First, Hasaranga, Max. 3 matches. What's he done in those 3 matches?
Well, he's taken 16 wickets.
He's taken a
average of
fiver.
7.
Yes. He has been wrecking shit in this qualifier.
It's almost like he's a bit too good to play against the Associate Nations, but not quite good enough for everyone else.
Well, no, I think
as you know, he was second top wicket taker in the IPL, wasn't he? So
I think
being a little harsh.
is pretty good. He was a little bit off the boil in the IPL, but I think Hasaranga is pretty good. That's good for Sri Lanka. They're sitting in a really nice position, and I think kudos to them. I had to go through the qualifiers. They've been very professional. I think quite clearly the best team in the tournament so far. Second big story from Group B, Max. Ireland played 3,
absolutely bombed it.
3, and
they included a 1-wicket defeat against Scotland, didn't it? That was a hell of a game.
Yep. They've also gone down to Sri Lanka, and I think most tragically, from an Ireland point of view, they lost to Iran. Max,
Iran? They're not even in the
Iran. Oman.
That was really impressive.
It's been a complete shit show for the Irish, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, especially when they're talking about how Josh Little didn't play in the Test match against England. Our focus is the World Cup qualifiers. This is this is what's important. This is what matters. This is what we've been working towards, etc. Really makes a mockery of it, doesn't it? It's really bad for. I mean, they're a full Test playing nation, and they've been done by Scotland and Oman. I mean, they're going backwards. And I think part of that is possibly down to them getting full Test status, and the sort of then lack of cricket that some of the Irish guys get in England, which they were able to have before as a homegrown player. They could have a UK passport,
like a finishing school,
play for Ireland, but no longer can they do that. So that's possibly something to do with it. And they've got some good players regardless. I mean, they should be beating Oman and Scotland. I mean, they proper ballsed it up, and it's a really, really disappointing for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty devastating. They've been on a pretty poor run in ODI cricket since Balbirnie, the current captain, took over. I think 19 matches is the number of matches he has overseen. I believe, Max, he has won only 3. in that time. Now Ireland, obviously, they've
That's
been in the
bad.
in the top tier of the Super League, so it's not like he's going. It's not like he's been going around the world playing the UAE every week, and that's happened. That includes losses to India. I think they lost to England 3-0. Like there's some, they played some. Actually, maybe it was 2-1. Maybe one of the games was they managed to win one of those. But they played the A-listers. Now, there was that series against South Africa, wasn't there, where if they'd won it, they might have been in a position to qualify automatically. But South Africa, similarly, they needed to win, so they played.
They tried
pretty well. Yeah, Bangladesh recently in Essex. A bunch of good cricket. He's under a little bit of pressure. Do you think they'll make a move, sack Balbo?
I mean, it's just a question of where you go, isn't it? I mean, who takes over? I don't think there's any use in changing the captain. I don't think that's the cause of the problems. I think there's probably more structural things that they need to look at. And obviously, they've got players, like Josh Little, who perform well and then go and play in the IPL, and that should be a really good experience for those kind of players. And I think they should be probably supporting that kind of thing, and I think they do. I think it's just a question of getting more cricket under their belts, and I'm sure they'll come back, because there's, like I say, there's some really good looking cricketers. I mean, we saw that from some of the test matches, and these are guys who they go into the test match on the back of playing white ball stuff. Basically, the only red ball stuff they play is tests. So they're playing basically all the formats, and we saw the quality of some of those players. So I'm sure they'll turn things around, but it's just not, maybe Zimbabwe's not a happy hunting ground for them.
Possibly. I'll just look at their next fixtures. They go straight into the T20 World Cup European qualifiers. Italy, Denmark, Austria, Jersey, Germany. It's going to feel like a real come down, I think.
I mean, that's a real
that when you've just played to try and get to the World Cup, and you have to do that.
That's a bang back to earth, isn't it?
That's pretty astonishing. Let's get to the main event, Max, because the other group, there have been some pretty big stories too. We know they've played all their matches, so we know where people stand. The big one was today, really. So Zimbabwe, let's do Zimbabwe first. Zimbabwe played really good cricket throughout. They've been pretty top. Basically have comfortably beaten everybody that they played. West Indies gave them a little bit of a game. You'd say, like, it wasn't a complete walkover.
What was it? It was like 40-odd run win, wasn't it?
Still, it was still a pretty handy margin. And they got there pretty comfortably. The thing is though that it came down to, right. So Zimbabwe, they're out of it. Next two teams in the group are the West Indies and the Netherlands. They go into a game today. Basically, both of them know they're in the next round because they've done the business against the teams down the bottom of that table. Because Sri Lanka have won all their games, and because Zimbabwe have won all their games, it becomes effectively a de facto knockout match, because the permutations to get through in the Super Six, if you carry forward no points, is extremely difficult for you to. The odds of it are very long, even if you.
The whole setup becomes somewhat pointless.
Yes. They play West Indies. They bat first. Max, they rack up runs. Like they rack up runs like runs are going out of fashion. 374 for 6. It's it looks like a game basically where class is going to show through. Nicholas Pooran, 104 from 65 balls. Pretty good innings, you would say there. Pretty decent.
Yeah.
From the big man. Netherlands, they come out. They start kind of okay. They lose some regular wickets. They're with the rate for quite a long time. Find themselves 170 for 4 though. After 30 overs, things have slipped away.
That's the point
somewhat.
where I'm like, well, this is done. Like they need
204 of 20 overs with 6 wickets remaining, like the lower order to do it. And then the wheels come off big time for West Indies. Like it really all goes wrong. Teja Nidamanaru he is the star of the show from the point of view of the Netherlands. He scores 111 max of 76 balls. Ably supported by skipper Scott Edwards, 67 of 47 for him. And it looks like the Netherlands are actually going to kind of get there somewhat easily at points in this chase. Wicket slow, they change things, and then the West Indies are back in it, and it looks like the West Indies are going to do it. 30 off 2 overs is what it comes down to. And I mean, like, I still don't really understand how this happened. Second last over is bowled by Roston Chase. I honestly have no conception of why this why this is the case. Roston Chase gets pelted basically. He really goes around the park. It goes to the final over. Alzari Joseph has the ball. I think the first delivery of the over goes for 4. Then there's a single. Then there's a dot. It comes down to 4 off 3. Netherlands lose a wicket. It comes down to 1 off 1. Logan van Beek's back on strike, and he is caught at mid-on. We're going to a super over, Max. I mean, like the game has swung all over the place. I mean, at one point, this is genuinely true. I had a look at the Google Win Predictor, which I think just pulled through from one of the betting markets.
Yeah,
it gave the Netherlands 0.5% chance of victory. Like, they had no chance, and then they were massive favourites in the last over, and then they managed to blow it. And it ends 3-7-4 all. And if you're a West Indies fan at this point, you're thinking, "Thank fucking Christ for that! Like, we've managed to get away with this. We're gonna get another bite at the apple." Kind of predictably, the Netherlands, they send out Logan van Beek, who's just been in the middle. He's batting pretty well. Nobody could have seen what was going to happen next, though. Like, this was, one of the all-time fucking. What the hell is going on here? Cricketing things. Jason Holder with the ball. 4-4. I can't remember the order.
4-6, 4-6, 6-4.
Nuts. 30 runs off 6 balls. I mean, it's over. It's
super over.
Game fucking over. Yeah, it's super duper over.
Yeah.
At that point in time. The West Indies, they sent out Johnson Charles. He actually hits the first ball for 6, and you think, no way.
Obviously, it's Van Beek bowling it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then they throw the ball to, or no, then he takes a single, and it means Shea Hope, of all people,
just the man
has to hit 4 sixes.
Have you ever heard of a guy called Nicholas Purran?
Well, so I heard for some reason that Purran wasn't eligible to bat. Now, I don't actually know the rule for this, but apparently Purran, they weren't allowed to send Purran out.
Why? You send anyone you like.
Well, why wouldn't you send Purran then? Why would you send Shai Hope?
Well, I have no idea. But why would that be a rule? I don't understand.
I don't know. I don't know how any of these things work. I'm just somebody who goes on the internet and pretends to be a cricket expert under the auspices of a show called the Cricket Podcast. Why would I have done the basic research?
No, why would you?
Know whether that was true or not?
Well, why would I? Why would I have done the research?
Exactly. But either West Indies did a blunder and they didn't send the one guy that might have got past 30, or they weren't allowed. What it effectively means, though, Max, and this is massive. These are shockwaves through world cricket. It means West Indies are not going to be at the World Cup later this year. What is your reaction to that?
Well, it's a shock, and it's not a shock because I mean, West Indies have been sort of pottering along quite unimpressively for quite a while in all forms of cricket. Like, their T20 side is probably their strongest suit, and even that's sort of gone to pot a bit lately. And the one day sides, you've got Roston Chase bowling the 49th over. Something's gone wrong, and so it's like it's crazy for a side that big with that much history to not be playing at a World Cup, but it's just not. When you sort of look at it and look at what West Indies have been like in the last 10 years, it's just not all that surprising, is it? Like the Netherlands, the likes of the Netherlands, not Ireland in this tournament, but still Ireland. I mean, we've seen Zimbabwe, we've seen Namibia in the World Cup, we've seen Scotland, beat some of the big guys as well in the short format, and it's just people are catching them up. And the West Indies are just floundering, I think. And they need to sort their shit out.
To be honest, Matt, that's very similar to my take on this. Like, I think this match shows a few things. It shows the strength. Again, if you needed a reminder, I mean, these teams have been beating so-called major nations pretty regularly for a while now. It's not. It isn't really that much of a shock that the Netherlands could beat the West Indies. And I would say the reason for that is not necessarily that the West Indies are a lot worse now than they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. West Indies have not been a serious force at a major tournament basically since Brian Lara retired. Like it's a long time since the West Indies were a fearsome ODI team. What's different is that all these other teams have got exceptional cricketers now. They're professional. They're coached well. They plan well. They analyze things properly. These guys get contracts in some of the franchise leagues as well. They have that experience, and it was sort of a matter of time, I think, before one of the major nations was caught out in this way. I think the other thing it shows up is that it's absolutely ridiculous that we have a 10-team World Cup.
Yeah.
Like, it is one of the dumbest things cricket has done recently, cutting the World Cup to 10 teams. There is absolutely no excuse for both of these teams not being at the World Cup. I mean, of the six that are going to be in the next round of the qualifiers, pretty much all of them, I think, would deserve a place in a World Cup. And that doesn't even include Ireland, who probably also have the skills to be at a World Cup. You don't actually. I don't know what's going on in cricket. Like, you don't actually have to think the team can win the World Cup for them to deserve a spot in the World Cup. Like, in football, people don't complain about Saudi Arabia and
Honduras
Iran
turning up,
or Honduras being at the World Cup. No, people recognise that you've earned your place there by being the best in your part of the world and being good at football, and that it is a World Cup and it's an advert for the game and it's a way for growing the game. Only in cricket will people be like, no, we only want to see the best 10 teams all capable of beating each other, of winning it. It isn't a problem that India would probably turn over, or India would beat Netherlands 95 out of 100 times. Like, that is not a problem for cricket. Like, that is fine. The Netherlands
should be rewarded with an opportunity to play against India on this stage. Yeah.
Same for the West Indies. You know, it's not a problem that India beat them 80 out of 100 times in India if they were to make it to the World Cup.
Is it a sign of just ODI cricket in general, like where it's viewed?
I don't know. I think it's just like, I think it's actually what it is. It's they don't want there to be a situation where a team like India doesn't play lots of games at a World Cup. If you have more than 10 teams, then you need to have groups, which means there's the possibility that India don't play lots of games at a World Cup. There is also the possibility that they don't play Pakistan, which is a big earner for the ICC. Now, like the
World Cup, make them be in the same group.
Well,
they always do.
Yeah, the thing with the World Cup as well, and the ICC in general, and we've said this a bunch of times on the show. They're basically running a franchise tournament. It's just the team names are England and India and Ireland. Well, not Ireland, New Zealand. They're the same. It's the same model. It's like, clear the calendar for 6 weeks. We'll all come round. We'll sell some TV rights, and the company that owns the tournament, the ICC, will make a bunch of loot. Like, there isn't actually. They're not thinking, how does the World Cup fit into our strategy to make cricket solidly the number 2 sport in the world? And so what we're going to have is a World Cup where there is no representation from the Americas at all. Which is so thick, especially when you see games like this. Like, this could easily have been a group stage game in the World Cup, and the winner of it gets to play a knockout game against India, and they're probably going to lose. But the prize is massive, a quarter-final against India or England. Instead, it's a game that only real cricket nerds are going to hear about, and the drama, the excitement of it. Over. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Alexander Hind has asked in the chat, are you guys going to watch the US T20 tournament? We'll watch a little bit of it. It sort of happens in the middle of the English summer, so it's not ideal timing. We'll watch some. It'll be of interest, I think, how it goes. But I don't think it will be number one on the docket, as it were. It semi clashes with the Ashes and a bit with the 100 or something like that, doesn't it? Which are fairly big things here. And then we had Max. We had just the solo question from Twitter today, and this one, it came in from Chak. I'm personally not happy with there only being 10 teams at the World Cup. Don't like the league stage format. Personally, I think it should be similar to Football World Cup, but 16 teams, top 2 in each group, go to quarterfinals, etc. Thoughts? I think 16 teams would be fine. What I would do is I'd actually have 2 groups of 8, though. Play loads of matches that way. Have 2 games a day. And
I think
I'd send the top 4
is too few.
Yeah, I'd send the top 4 teams through, and first place, 4th in the other group, and so on. So there's a big prize for winning the group because it probably means you play Zimbabwe, and vice versa. But there's like plenty of cricket, and also room for upsets and things like that. Which
and it gives you the opportunity for regional qualifiers and that sort of thing. I think,
yeah. I think, Max, we are basically done with the cricket podcast this week. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching and listening. One final point of order: we're sponsored by Serious Cricket. Use the code TCP23 for 10% off there. Get all your cricket equipment. Ross broke his bat as well, getting a 99 yesterday. So he'll be heading over to Serious Cricket using the code TCP23 to get himself a new piece of willow. And if you go to the show notes, you can see a bunch of links to support the show. So you can sign up as a Patreon, patreon.com/The Cricket Pod. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Cricket Pod. You can even go over to Facebook and support us, follow us on Facebook. The link to that is in the show notes. I think it's facebook.com/The Cricket Pod. We set that up today. At the time of speaking, we have 5 followers. That's pretty big, which is, I think, something like 0.1% of our audience. So let's see if we can up that slightly. It's day one. It's early days. And keep supporting. We are back on Wednesday for some daily shows for the Ashes. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. No show on Saturday. Show again on Sunday. That's the schedule. We look forward to doing them, and we look forward to having you all along with us. Max, any words from you?
Bring on the Aussies. Round 2. Ding, ding, ding.
Fighting talk. Goodbye.